Hi everyone, it's Alex, and I actually have a dual review for today. But before I do that, I want to read this quote from The Art of Memoir by Mary Karr. The goal of a voice is to speak not with objective authority, but with subjective curiosity. It's not that memories aren't shady, but the self aware memoirist constantly pokes and prods at his doubts. There are two really great standout memoirs that I read last year, or at least recently, that I think do a really great job at this idea of subjective curiosity with memoir. In The Dream House by Carmen Machado has Machado describe her first relationship while being in a same-sex relationship and how she dealt with abuse. And Know My Name by Chanel Miller is also a memoir and has Miller articulate her abuse while overcoming her sexual assault with Stanford student Brock Turner. I think the success of both of these memoirs is how patient they are, and in turn, how curious they are at attempting to identify the personas of their abusers. By establishing clear opposition for who's likely responsible for their negative feelings that they experience, I think both Miller and Machado are really conscious of not entirely villainizing their abusers, which unfortunately I feel like is in part that both being women, that Machado and Miller do have to be careful of existing in this realm of suspicion that they never asked to be in. However, both Know My Name and In the Dream House, to me, don't dilly-dally with trying to prove what is considered true or untrue. Instead, the reader is given in both texts an onslaught of obstacles that really convey this overwhelming sense of exhaustion, especially with memory's role with abuse related to manipulation and gaslighting and how it really affected both Machado and Miller. So one might recommend that a way to combat this sense of malleability with memory might be establishing a sense of place. But in regard to setting, this is something Machado immediately thinks of early in the memoir, and she says, "Places are never just places in a piece of writing. If they are, the author has failed. Setting is not inert, it is activated by point of view." So in a way, we have the dream house itself that Machado conceives as a way to create this point of view, kind of insinuating that Machado's the only one that has this privileged access to being able to go in and out of the dream house and access her feelings and memories at any time, even if those feelings might change. Most interestingly, Machado even sort of disrupts this sense of setting by creating this section in the memoir with a specific methodology of storytelling that becomes a choose your own adventure. You can literally flip to certain pages that Machado instructs you to do if you prefer a certain outcome of her life that she's been spending the whole entire memoir trying to convey to us. I thought this was incredibly refreshing, and I think it further distincts how the difference between fiction and nonfiction is that often for me with nonfiction I do feel this sense of responsibility with subconsciously or consciously understanding my own feelings towards someone's real life. Similarly, in Know My Name, the strength of setting comes from how Miller constantly reconfigures her identity after her sexual assault. Miller describes her disassociation from her experience, often favoring her alias Emily Doe, as she begins to manifest these different facets of her personality. Whether it's Miller taking up spoken word poetry in order to sort of confront her assault, or whether it's writing her famous impact statement, the whole memoir can't seem to escape this haunting sense of exhaustion. And Miller also makes sure to really try to depict this collective exhaustion with the time that we live in now, with movements like Me Too, and also mentioning heightened pattern of police brutality. So understanding that the context of her own injustice that she feels is larger to speak for the world in its time. I think for me what really solidified Miller's sense of exhaustion is also her depiction of describing her loneliness, especially whenever she so positively describes the love and support from her family and friends. She also feels almost shamed or even more guilty for that, as she constantly, through the legal process as well, has to relive those experiences whenever she testifies, and she becomes confused about how this singular thing that happened to her could also be this sense of projection. With both In the Dream House and also Know My Name, there is a suggestion or the idea that the reader could try to imagine what would a memoir be like from the opposition, or for example, being more clear, what would a memoir from Brock Turner be like, or what would a memoir from Machado's ex-lover be like. But again, with both of these memoirs, I feel like it wasn't really my responsibility or the goal to believe Machado and Miller. Of course, I do believe them, but I feel like really what both memoirs are doing is trying to tug at the reader to really understand that both of these women had no idea that these experiences would ever happen to them. Both Machado and Miller were considerably young when both of these unfortunate events happened to them, and I feel like within that time period also, whether through adolescence or young adulthood, I feel like there's also that simultaneous pressure that they were feeling to really figure themselves out. And with the horrible things happening to them within the same time, you can really feel that conflict and sense of anxiety while reading both memoirs. Machado and Miller managed to produce writing that is both honest and vulnerable, yet still withhold enough to really question how readers can be conscious of indulging themselves in storytelling, and how both of these memoirs, I think, craft storytelling and structure so well, whether it's with Machado creating this dream house or Miller emphasizing how the legal process specifically is this sort of ostracizing and lonely experience that no one really ever prepares you for. I highly recommend both of these books. I think they're two memoirs that will really stand the test of time and be continuously read years and years from now. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.